Hi and welcome. You are listening to Listen and Relax. Sit back and enjoy crazy stories about real-life scams. If you want us to continue making these videos, let us know in the comments what you think about the stories. Please like, comment, subscribe, and hit that notification bell to stay updated when we post new exciting stories. These stories are all based on true stories. Thank you for listening. The day I opened the door to a wolf in sheep's clothing. It was a quiet Saturday afternoon, the kind of day where the ticking of the clock seems louder than usual. I was sitting in my favorite armchair, a cup of tea cooling on the side table, when the phone rang. I picked it up, expecting it to be my daughter checking in, but instead, a man's voice greeted me with an air of authority. "Good afternoon, sir. This is Detective Vandermeer from the National Police. I'm calling regarding an urgent matter." His tone was calm but firm, the kind of voice that made you sit up straighter. He explained that 2 criminals had been arrested in my apartment complex, and they had confessed to a series of burglaries in the area. My heart sank. I've lived here for over 30 years, and I've always felt safe. But now, this detective was telling me that my home might be at risk. "We believe they may have targeted your apartment," he continued. "Have you noticed anything missing recently? Jewelry, cash, or other valuables?" I thought about it for a moment. Nothing came to mind, but the way he spoke made me doubt myself. He sounded so professional, so convincing. He even knew details about my neighborhood that only someone from the police would know. Or so I thought. "To be safe," he said, "we're sending an officer to your home to conduct a quick inspection. He'll be there shortly. Please cooperate fully with him. This is for your own protection." I thanked him and hung up, my mind racing. I've always considered myself a cautious person, someone who doesn't fall for scams easily. But this felt different. It felt real. About 20 minutes later, there was a knock at the door. I peered through the peephole and saw a man in a dark suit, holding a badge up to the camera. He looked official, so I opened the door. "Good afternoon, sir," he said, flashing a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "I'm here to inspect your home for any signs of tampering. May I come in?" I hesitated for a moment, but the memory of the detective's warning pushed me to step aside. He walked in, his eyes scanning the room with an intensity that made me uneasy. He asked me to gather any valuables I had, cash, jewelry, important documents, so he could check them for fingerprints. "It's standard procedure," he assured me. "We want to make sure none of your belongings have been compromised." I did as he asked, bringing out a small box where I kept some cash and a few pieces of jewelry that had been in the family for generations. He took the box from me, his hands moving quickly as he examined each item. Then, without warning, he turned to me and said, "I need to take these with me for further analysis. We'll return them once we're done." Something about the way he said it made my stomach twist. "Wait," I said, my voice trembling. "Can't you do that here?" He shook his head, his expression hardening. "I'm afraid not, sir. This is a serious investigation. We need to follow protocol." Before I could protest further, he was out the door, my precious belongings tucked under his arm. I stood there, frozen, as the reality of what had just happened sank in. I had been robbed, not by a stranger breaking in under the cover of darkness, but by a man I had willingly let into my home. I immediately called 112, my hands shaking so badly I could barely dial the numbers. The operator listened patiently as I explained what had happened, but by the time the police arrived, the man was long gone. They took my statement, but I could see the pity in their eyes. I wasn't the first, and I wouldn't be the last. Looking back, I can't believe how easily I fell for it. They were so convincing, so professional. But that's the thing about these scammers. They know exactly how to play on your fears, your trust, your sense of security. They're wolves in sheep's clothing, and by the time you realize it, it's too late. So I'm sharing my story with you, not just to warn you, but to beg you. Be careful. If someone calls claiming to be from the police or any other authority, don't take their word for it. Verify their identity. Call the official number for the organization they claim to represent. And whatever you do, don't let them into your home. Because once that door opens, there's no telling what you might lose. The call that almost cost me everything. It was a quiet Tuesday morning, and I was sitting at my kitchen table, sipping my coffee and scrolling through the news on my tablet. The phone rang, and I glanced at the screen. The number had a German country code. I hesitated for a moment. I don't usually answer calls from unknown international numbers, but something made me pick up. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was the fact that I was waiting for a package from Amazon Germany. Whatever it was, I answered. "Hello, this is Amazon customer support," a man's voice said in perfect English. "We're calling to inform you about a suspicious transaction on your account." My heart skipped a beat. Suspicious transaction? I leaned forward, my coffee forgotten. The man on the other end of the line sounded calm and professional, and he quickly explained that someone had attempted to place an order for €499 using my account. The order, he said, had been made from London. "I don't live in London," I said, my voice rising in panic. "I didn't make that order." "I understand, sir," the man replied smoothly. "That's why we're calling. We want to help you cancel this transaction and secure your account." He assured me that they wouldn't ask for any personal information, which made me feel slightly better. But then he asked me to download an app called AnyDesk. "This will allow us to remotely access your device so we can assist you in real time," he explained. I froze. AnyDesk? I'd never heard of it, but something about the request felt off. I'm not the most tech-savvy person, but I know enough to be wary of giving strangers access to my devices. Still, the man's tone was so convincing and the situation seemed so urgent. I was torn. "Sir, we need to act quickly to prevent this transaction from going through," he pressed. "Please download the app so we can help you." I hesitated, my finger hovering over the download button. But then, something inside me clicked. Why would Amazon need to access my device to cancel an order? I'd never heard of such a thing. And why were they calling me from a German number when I was dealing with Amazon Germany? It didn't add up. "I'm sorry," I said, my voice firm. "I'm not comfortable with this. I'll contact Amazon directly through their official website." There was a pause on the other end of the line, and for a moment I thought he might argue. But then he simply said, "Very well, sir, but please act quickly. We don't want your account to be compromised." The call ended, and I sat there, my heart pounding. I immediately went to my computer and logged into my Amazon account. There were no suspicious orders, no signs of any unauthorized activity. I double-checked everything, but it all seemed fine. That's when I realized I had almost fallen for a scam. Over the next few hours, I received more calls, this time from numbers in the Netherlands and Spain. Each time, the story was the same. A suspicious transaction, a request to download an app, a sense of urgency designed to push me into making a mistake. But I didn't answer. Instead, I reported the numbers to the authorities and blocked them. Later, I did some research and learned about something called a remote access scam. It's a tactic where scammers trick people into giving them control of their devices by pretending to be from a legitimate company. Once they have access, they can steal personal information, drain bank accounts, or even lock you out of your own device. The thought of what could have happened sent a chill down my spine. I consider myself a cautious person, but this experience taught me just how convincing these scammers can be. They play on your fears, your trust, and your desire to fix a problem quickly. And they're good at it. So, if you ever get a call like this, no matter how convincing it sounds, don't take the bait. Hang up and contact the company directly through their official channels. And whatever you do, don't download any apps or give anyone remote access to your devices. Because once they're in, it's not just your money they're after, it's your peace of mind. And that's something you can't afford to lose. The day my WhatsApp betrayed me, it was just another ordinary day. I was busy juggling work, family, and my little side hustle of selling clothes on Marktplaats. I'd been doing it for years, and it had always gone smoothly. I had a system. I never shipped anything until the money was in my account. It was simple, safe, and reliable, or so I thought. That day started like any other. I was in the middle of responding to messages from potential buyers when I got a message from someone interested in a package of clothes. We chatted back and forth, and everything seemed normal. Then, out of the blue, they sent me a strange request. "I'm going to do something silly. I'm sending you a code. Can you send it back to me?" I didn't think much of it. It seemed harmless enough. So when the code popped up on my phone, I forwarded it to them without a second thought. That was my first mistake. Within minutes, my phone started buzzing with calls from foreign numbers. I ignored them at first, but then a Dutch number called. I answered, thinking it might be important. The person on the other end didn't say much, just a few words before hanging up. I didn't realize it at the time, but that call was the scammers confirming they had successfully hacked my WhatsApp. The next hour was a blur. I was on my way to work when a friend called me. "Hey, Yas," she said, sounding confused. "I just got a message from you saying you needed money. Is everything okay?" My heart dropped. "What? No, I didn't send that," I stammered. I immediately called my husband, who posted a warning on Facebook to let everyone know my WhatsApp had been hacked. But it was already too late. When I got to work, a colleague approached me with a worried look. "Yas, I just transferred 1,000 euro to you. You said you were at the municipality applying for new passports and needed money urgently. I wanted to help." I felt sick to my stomach. "I didn't send that message," I said, my voice shaking. "My WhatsApp was hacked. I'm so sorry." We called the bank right away, hoping to stop the transaction, but the money was already gone. Just like that, 1,000 euro had vanished into thin air. We filed a police report, but they couldn't do much. The scammers were long gone, and there was no way to trace the money. The guilt was overwhelming. I felt responsible, even though I knew it wasn't my fault. My colleague had only been trying to help, and now she was out of pocket because of me. I couldn't shake the feeling that I should have seen it coming, that I should have been more careful. But as the days went by, I realized something important. I wasn't the only victim here. My colleague was a victim too. We had both been targeted by criminals who knew exactly how to exploit trust and kindness. And while I couldn't undo what had happened, I could try to make it right. I started a fundraiser to help my colleague recover the lost money. Friends, family, and even strangers chipped in, and while we didn't reach the full amount, we managed to raise 600 euros. It wasn't perfect, but it was something. Looking back, I've learned a lot from that experience. Scammers are clever, and they're always coming up with new ways to trick people. But there are things you can do to protect yourself. Never share codes or personal information with strangers, no matter how harmless it seems. If you get a suspicious message, call the person directly to verify it's really them. And always trust your gut. If something feels off, it probably is. Most importantly, I've learned not to blame myself. What happened to me could happen to anyone. Scammers are experts at manipulating people, and they don't care who they hurt. The best thing we can do is share our stories, warn others, and support each other when things go wrong. So if you ever find yourself in a situation like mine, remember this. You're not alone, and it's not your fault. We're all in this together, and together we can fight back against the scammers who try to take advantage of us. The man who stole my heart and my money. It's been 10 years since I ended my 31-year relationship with the father of my children. After so many years of sharing my life with someone, being alone felt strange. I missed the companionship, the conversations, the little moments that make life feel full. So I decided to dip my toes into the world of online dating. I chose a Christian dating site, thinking it would be safe, trustworthy. After all, people of faith wouldn't deceive others, right? Oh, how wrong I was. At first, everything seemed normal. I chatted with a few Dutch men, but nothing really clicked. Then, one day, an American man reached out to me. He was charming, attentive, and seemed genuinely interested in me. He asked for my MSN details, and soon we were talking every day. "Did you sleep well?" he'd ask in the morning. "What are you having for breakfast?" He showered me with attention, something I hadn't realized I was craving so much after my divorce. It felt good to be cared for, to feel like someone was thinking about me. For 2 months, we talked constantly. He told me about his work in Malaysia, his dreams, his life. I felt like I was getting to know him, and I started to believe that maybe, just maybe, this could be something real. Then, he dropped the bombshell. He wanted to meet me. My heart leapt. Finally, I thought, this could be the start of something beautiful. But there was a catch. He couldn't take time off work to come to me, so he asked if I could help him by paying for his plane ticket. I hesitated. Something about it didn't feel right, but he was so convincing, so persistent. He assured me it was just a loan that he'd pay me back as soon as he could. Against my better judgment, I agreed. That was the beginning of the end. Once I sent that first payment, the requests kept coming. He needed money for visas, for unexpected expenses, for emergencies. Each time, he had a reason, a story that made it seem urgent, necessary. And each time, I found myself giving in, even though that nagging feeling in my gut told me something was wrong. 2 months passed, and I had sent him thousands of euros. But then, something changed. He became more obsessive, more demanding. The man who had once been so kind and attentive now seemed desperate, almost aggressive. That's when I started to doubt. I decided to check his address, and that's when the truth hit me like a ton of bricks. He didn't live where he said he did. He wasn't who he said he was. I felt sick. I had been scammed. I went to the police, who told me to cut off all contact immediately. But I couldn't. Not yet. I was addicted to the attention, to the illusion of connection. So I kept talking to him, but this time I was the one playing the game. I wanted to understand how someone could do this, how they could manipulate people so easily. What I discovered shocked me. I wasn't talking to one man. I was talking to a team of scammers. They took turns, each playing a role, each feeding me lies. It was a well-oiled machine designed to exploit people like me, people who were lonely, vulnerable, and longing for connection. Eventually, I cut off all contact. But even then, they didn't stop. On June 30th, I received a desperate email, begging for more money. It was well-written, emotional, and almost convincing. But I didn't fall for it. Not this time. I deleted the email and blocked the sender. Looking back, I feel a mix of emotions: anger, sadness, regret. But most of all, I feel a sense of empowerment. I survived this. I learned from it. And now I'm sharing my story to warn others. If something feels off, trust your gut. Don't let anyone pressure you into giving them money, no matter how convincing they sound. The love scam, I used to think I had a good sense of who people really were. I saw myself as an intelligent, independent woman. But love, or what I believed was love, has a way of blinding you. It all started on a dating site. I had been single for a few years, and loneliness crept in more than I cared to admit. Then there he was, David. He was charming, polite, and attentive. He worked on an oil rig just like my brother. That gave me a sense of security. When he spoke about his work, it all made sense. I even checked with my brother, and everything he told me sounded real. For 6 months, we spoke every day. I felt a connection I had not experienced in years. He listened to me, remembered the little details, and made me feel special. He talked about meeting in person, making plans for the future. I was falling in love. Then came the first request. It was small, innocent even. He needed to pay a lawyer for some paperwork, but had trouble transferring money from his offshore account. He assured me it was temporary. I refused. He understood, or at least he pretended to. But then he sent money to my account instead. "Just forward it for me," he said. "It is easier this way." I hesitated. Why would he send me money if he was trying to scam me? But I did it. Once, twice. It seemed harmless. Then he asked me to add some of my own money. Just a small amount. Just this once. "We are in this together," he told me, and I believed him. I did not see it happening, but slowly he had built a web around me. He made me trust him, made me feel like we were partners. Until the day the bank called. "Miss, we have reason to believe you are involved in fraudulent activity," the voice on the other end of the line said. I was furious. How dare they question me? How dare they interfere in my private life? I hung up, shaking with anger. But the words would not leave my mind. If you think about it, you will see the holes in his story. I had not wanted to see them before, but now I did. I called the bank back, and the truth came crashing down on me. The money I had transferred had gone to a criminal organization. The man I loved did not exist. Every word, every promise, all lies. I lost money. I lost my trust. But what hurt the most was losing the future I thought I had. I was devastated, ashamed. How could I have been so blind? Joining a support group changed everything. I met other women who had been through the same nightmare. Women like me, smart and independent, who had been tricked. We were not stupid. We were targeted, manipulated. The shame started to lift. Now I speak out. If I can help one person avoid what I went through, it is worth it. Because love should never cost you your dignity, your trust, or your sense of self. The fake neighborhood officers, how I lost everything. I never thought I would fall for it. The police are supposed to protect us. They are the ones we call when we are in danger. But that day, when the phone rang, I learned just how easy it was to be deceived, even for someone as cautious as me. The voice on the other end was calm and professional. "Good afternoon, ma'am. This is Detective Williams from the police department. We need to speak with you regarding an ongoing investigation. Several burglaries have occurred in your neighborhood, and valuable jewelry has been stolen. We are conducting a local security check to protect residents like yourself." I felt a shiver run down my spine. There had indeed been some break-ins in the area, or at least I had heard rumors. "Are you alone right now?" he asked. That question struck me as odd. Why would that matter? But before I could think too much about it, he continued. "We've identified a criminal gang targeting elderly residents. We suspect they are using sophisticated methods to access safes and jewelry boxes. To keep your valuables safe, we are sending an undercover officer to collect them for secure storage at the police station. This is a standard precaution, and you will receive a full receipt for everything. We just want to ensure your possessions don't fall into the wrong hands." It all sounded logical, sensible even. Then he mentioned my local community officer by name. That made me pause. How did he know? He even directed me to the official police website to verify the officer's identity. That was the moment my doubts started fading. 15 minutes later, a man in plain clothes arrived at my door. He looked serious, professional, even carrying an official-looking document for me to sign. He assured me my jewelry would be returned as soon as the danger had passed. I handed over my late mother's ring, my wedding bracelet, my grandmother's locket. It wasn't until hours later, when I called the real police station to check on the status, that I felt my world collapse. "Ma'am, we don't have anyone," just as a verification step to confirm that you're trustworthy. That seemed harmless. What's 1 cent, right? So I did it. A few days later, I was at a family gathering when I casually mentioned the apartment. My stepsister suddenly froze and said, "I just saw something on a TV show about scams. Someone was asked to transfer 1 cent, and later they found out their name was used to open a fake bank account. The scammer took out loans in their name, and months later, they discovered they owed €60,000. Panic hit me like a truck. It was a Sunday, so the banks were closed. I had to wait until the next morning. As soon as the bank opened, I called them. I explained everything. Their response made my stomach drop. "Yes, ma'am. The account you transferred the 1 cent to is registered under your name." I could barely process what was happening. Someone had used my identity to open a bank account, without me even knowing. The bank reassured me, saying it's not as easy as those TV shows make it sound. But within a week and a half, this scammer had still managed to do it. Luckily, they were able to freeze the account before any loans were taken out. But to fully close it, I had to file a police report first. So I did, immediately. The scammer's ads were also removed from the website, but by then, the damage was done. To this day, I don't know how far the scammer got. Maybe he applied for loans in my name, but since I had a credit registration from a previous debt settlement, his requests might have been denied. The bank refused to give me more details. The police never followed up with me. And worst of all, he still has my documents. I changed all my passwords, secured my other accounts, and tried to move on. But for weeks, paranoia crept into my thoughts. Is he still using my identity somewhere? Could he be listening to me, watching me? That fear doesn't just disappear overnight. Later, I discovered that the same apartment, with the exact same photos, was listed on a real estate agent's website. The only difference? The rent was double what the scammer had advertised. He had stolen the images and used them to bait people like me. And I have no doubt he's still doing it under a different name. I was lucky. Many others won't be. Ironically, I did eventually find a new home, again through an online marketplace. But this time I was extremely cautious. I made sure everything was verified before I even considered handing over documents or money. Now, I'm almost done renovating my new place, and soon I'll be moving in. But I'll never forget how close I came to losing everything. The shadow broker. I always thought I could see people for who they truly were. I was wrong. It started like any other Monday morning. half asleep, drowning in coffee, and buried in emails. But that was the day he arrived, the new team leader, brought in from the outside, tasked with fixing our mess of a department. The moment he stepped through the door, something shifted. His presence was commanding, his words sharp and deliberate. He spoke with a confidence that made you believe he had all the answers. And somehow, it felt like he saw me, not just another employee, but someone worth listening to. Within weeks, things changed. Efficiency skyrocketed. The team, once a chaotic battleground of egos and complaints, started to thrive under his direction. He had this way of making you feel important, like your ideas mattered. And with me, it went a step further. He sought me out, praised my insights, trusted me. Then one afternoon over lunch, the conversation took a turn. Money, investments, side hustles. The usual office talk escalated into something more enticing. He spoke of his success in reselling high-end electronics, MacBooks, iPhones, AirPods, all bought in bulk from one country and sold in another for massive profit. "I make thousands a week," he said, showing me screenshots of bank accounts overflowing with numbers I had only seen in dreams. Then came the question, "You want in?" It was a simple proposal. A small investment, $1,500. He'd handle the logistics, and I'd pocket a few hundred in profit each week. I hesitated. It sounded too good to be true. But then again, this man had done nothing but prove himself. His leadership had transformed our department. He delivered results. So I took the plunge. At first, everything was perfect. The money rolled in, just as he promised. A few days late, maybe, but it came. And each time it did, my trust in him solidified. "You could be making way more," he said one day. It made sense. The math checked out. If I doubled my investment, my returns would soar. I told my wife. She wasn't as convinced, but she saw my enthusiasm, my faith in him. And so we pooled our savings, $4,000 in total. That was the moment things changed. The first week, everything seemed fine. The money kept coming. The second week, a delay, then another, and then the first request. "Hey, can you spot me $350? Just a quick loan. There's a shipment I need to secure. You'll get it back in 2 days plus a bonus iPad for your patience." The hesitation came back, a whisper in the back of my mind. But then I reminded myself, he's always paid me back. So I sent it. 2 days turned into a week. Then 2, then 3. I got the money back, but no bonus, no iPad. Then another request. $450 this time. Just a temporary holdup with customs. I should have stopped, should have walked away. But by then, I had too much at stake. He still owed me thousands. If I pushed back too hard, if I made him angry, what then? And that's when the real stories started. The scars from his past, the debts, the people he owed, the men he once worked for, dangerous men, violent men. I never asked for details, but I didn't need to. He made sure I understood. "I've seen what happens when people cross the wrong ones," he said once, lifting his shirt just enough to reveal the deep, jagged scar across his ribs. It wasn't a threat, not directly, but the implication was clear. I had to tread carefully. Weeks turned into months. I got pieces of my money back, just enough to keep me from walking away. But every step forward came with another favor, another excuse, another delay. Then came the final promise. "The bank froze my accounts. They think I'm laundering money. It's discrimination, man. They see my last name, they assume the worst. But it's fine. I've got a guy working on it. This week I pay you back. Not just what I owe, more. For your patience, for your loyalty. $3,000 cash in hand." The hook was set. But this time I said no. No more favors, no more loans, no more waiting. And just like that, he disappeared. No texts, no calls. At work, he avoided me like a ghost. The man who had once treated me like a trusted ally now acted like I never existed. And then just as suddenly as he arrived, he was gone. Fired. No warning, no explanation. Just whispers in the halls. A scandal, they said. Some kind of fraud. No one had all the details, but I had a feeling I knew more than most. He never came for me. Never made good on his promises. The money I lost, it was gone. Just numbers on a screen that would never return. But the worst part wasn't the money. It was the feeling. The shame. I had known. The red flags were there from the start, waving right in my face. And yet I let myself believe. I let myself trust. And that trust cost me. I tell this story not for sympathy, not for pity, but because I know I'm not alone. Someone out there, right now, is hearing the same kind of promises, falling for the same kind of lies. So if you're listening, if your gut is screaming at you, if something feels too good to be true, listen to it before it's too late. Because the worst scars, they aren't the ones you can see. They're the ones that never fade. The friend who never was. It started innocently enough. A friend request on Facebook from a man named David. His profile picture showed a handsome, middle-aged man with a warm smile. He was an engineer working on an oil rig in the North Sea, he said. His wife had passed away from cancer a few years ago, and he was raising his teenage daughter alone. His story was heartbreaking, but also inspiring. He was strong, resilient, and kind, and he seemed genuinely interested in me. At first, we exchanged casual messages. He asked about my day, my hobbies, my life. He complimented me on my photos, saying I had a radiant smile and a kind soul. It felt good to be noticed, to feel appreciated. I hadn't felt that way in a long time. As the weeks went by, our conversations grew deeper. He shared more about his life, his struggles, his dreams, his loneliness. He told me how much he missed having someone to share his life with, someone who understood him. And then one day he said it, "I think I'm falling in love with you." I was stunned. It had only been a few weeks, but his words stirred something in me. I had been lonely for so long, and here was someone who seemed to truly care about me. I told myself to be cautious, but my heart was already starting to believe in the possibility of something real. Then the requests started. At first, they were small. He needed money to pay for his daughter's school fees. Then it was for an emergency repair on the oil rig. Each time he promised to pay me back as soon as he could. And each time I found myself sending him money, even though a part of me knew something wasn't right. But I ignored that voice. I wanted to believe in him, in us. He was so convincing, so attentive. He would message me every day, telling me how much he missed me, how much he cared about me. He even talked about visiting me once his contract on the oil rig was over. I started to imagine a future with him, a life together. Then one day, he disappeared. No messages, no calls, nothing. I was frantic. I messaged him repeatedly, but there was no response. I felt sick with worry. Had something happened to him? Was he in trouble? A few days later, he finally replied. He sounded desperate. He had been in an accident on the oil rig, he said. He needed money for medical bills, for his daughter, for everything. He begged me to help him, saying I was the only one he could turn to. That's when it hit me. The realization crashed over me like a wave. I had been scammed. The man I thought I knew, the man I thought cared about me, was nothing more than a figment of someone's imagination. A carefully crafted lie designed to manipulate me, to take advantage of my loneliness and my desire for connection. I felt like a fool. How could I have been so blind? How could I have let myself fall for something so obviously fake? The shame was overwhelming. I didn't tell anyone at first. I was too embarrassed, too afraid of what people would think. But then, I realized something important. I wasn't alone. There were others out there who had been through the same thing, who had fallen for the same lies. And by sharing my story, I could help prevent it from happening to someone else. So I started talking about it. I told my friends, my family, anyone who would listen. And you know what? They didn't laugh at me. They didn't judge me. They supported me, and they helped me see that what happened wasn't my fault. These scammers are experts at what they do. They know exactly how to play on your emotions, how to make you believe in something that isn't real. They follow scripts, use psychological tricks, and work in teams to create the illusion of a genuine connection. But we can fight back. By talking about it, by raising awareness, we can expose their tactics and protect others from falling into the same trap. And most importantly, we can remind ourselves that we're not alone, that we're not to blame. So, if you ever find yourself in a situation like mine, remember this: it's not your fault. These scammers are skilled manipulators, and they prey on our most basic human needs, for love, for connection, for companionship. But by sharing our stories, we can take away their power. We can protect each other, and we can make sure that no one else has to go through what I did. Thank you for listening to these stories. Hopefully you enjoyed them. Please like and subscribe if you want to hear more exciting stories.